Welcome to Between Two Chairs, Demystifying Commercial Real Estate, the podcast that brings you the latest insights and trends on the South Florida commercial real estate market, with your hosts, Fernando Arencibia Jr. and Jennifer Woolman. In each episode, we dive into the world of commercial real estate and break down complex concepts to make them accessible for everyone. Whether you're a real estate professional, a curious investor, or just interested in the South Florida market in general, Between Two Chairs is the podcast for you. So pull up a chair and join us.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Between Two Chairs. My name is Fernando Arencibia, and with me always is the effervescent Jennifer Woolman.
Effervescent.
Yes.
I like that. I think I can handle that today.
All right, I like it. Very good.
So today we're going to talk about the South Florida Independent Retailer Award show that we went to. It was my first time going, and I know it was yours as well. It usually happens at the same time as the annual NAR conference, so we haven't been able to go. But this year, luckily, as fate would have it, we were able to go. I'm so happy we went. It was a super cool event. This year it was held at Le Méridien Hotel in Dania Beach. And these awards are the brainchild of Hugh Chen with Saglo and Beth Azor with the Azor companies. These two shopping center owners are huge proponents of small businesses, independent retailers, and about 5 or 6 years ago, they realized there was nothing that recognized those small businesses in South Florida, so they wanted to do that and to help promote them to other retailers. So it's basically tenant reps and landlord reps volunteer or recommend small retailers that have at least obviously one store open, 1 to 2 stores, and that are getting ready to expand throughout South Florida or Florida. They try not to focus on franchises, but they do allow some if they're smaller, again, independents that started small that are currently growing. Super cool. There were a ton of people there. It was very, very interactive. You come in and there are a bunch of tables with each of the retailers set up like almost like a retail row for those of you who have been to ICSC. And you get to go and mingle with the small business owners. And then they have a live Shark Tank where 3 landlords. I was just giving an overview so that then we can do a dive in. And then they have the 3 sharks that sit on there and interview one of the retailers to see who can get them in their center. And then they have the live awards and the scholarship awards. Yeah. So now go into what you thought.
I think this is unlike any event that I've ever attended. That is a conference. Usually when you go to an awards, it's already predetermined who the winners are. There's not a lot of interaction between you and the people that are being considered for the awards. But kudos to Beth and Hugh. I mean, this is really a cool event, and I can't believe this is the first time that I've attended, and this is their 5th annual. But I loved everything about it. I thought it was so interactive. You really got a great opportunity to network, to really understand all these. I mean, how many nominees? There were over 30 right, nominees, and they were represented there one way or another. And I really loved the interactivity of it. I love that it is purposely created to be able to connect landlords and tenants and the reps that represent both sides, and the fact that you really get a glimpse into growing businesses. It's so exciting because we all know, and the numbers clearly stated, right, that the fabric of our economy is really in the small businesses. And the fact that we have this event that really honors these small independent retailers and how intentional they are about where they're going, what is their growth, understanding their market, understanding the demographics. That was just one component of it. And I thought that just the initial aspect of being able to interact with all of them and really get a lot of great information and share some ideas was just terrific. And that's before even getting to sit down and have the the program develop.
Right. There were a lot of coffee shops, a lot of food companies represented, whether they were small cafes, actual coffee roasters, restaurant, more sit-down restaurants, etc. There was also a lot of health and wellness and personal care. So that goes along with the trends that we're seeing in the market, right? Not only in South Florida, but kind of nationally, that personal wellness and restaurant, anything related to the experience in retail is doing extremely well. So I thought that was super cool too, to see that what's happening on a national and state level is also being demonstrated through who showed up on the local side.
So if I may, I'm going to do a little spoiler alert, but we are getting ready to welcome Beth to our podcast in another episode. And, I'm looking forward to really asking her how it has changed from the first iteration, right? The first award to now in its 5th year. And, because I noticed the same thing. I was like, there's not a lot of boutique stores, but everything is experiential, right? It's the food and beverage concepts, and then there is a lot of personal care, and the dynamic of how much that has shifted and changed has been tremendous, and really getting into not only the nail salon and the barber shop and things like that, but more about the wellness aspect
Correct.
of it. That it's really, it's not a doctor's office, but it is a center for you to get an IV with vitamins and and then do some treatments for your body, and very proactive. But that was one thing I remember, like, wow, there's not a lot of boutique stores. I wonder if that would have been different 5 years ago when it was started.
Right. And it's funny because in the areas that I go, there still are a lot of boutique stores. So I wonder if they're just super independent, where they don't meet the one and expanding criteria, because if you're an owner, maybe you feel like you can only focus on one space. I'm thinking of Gus's wife and her bridal shop, right? Why would, if she's hands-on with that shop, she's not necessarily going to want to have a bunch of different locations that are too far from her house, is what I'm thinking. But it would be super interesting to look into that. And hey, if you guys know any great retailers that are thinking of expanding, consider nominating them for next year, because nominations are already open. If you guys know Hugh and Beth, they're big planners, so they're already starting on next year's. The other thing that I thought was super cool is that the landlords that were there happened to be, for the most part, they were our local landlords too. That was super cool. And out of the 200 or so shopping center owners that were there, they control about 75% of all retail space in South Florida. So if you are somebody looking to expand, I couldn't think of a better place, because to your point, some of these award ceremonies or conferences that try to link people together are so big that it's almost like a hit or miss, right? Because it just depends on who you've been able to pre-schedule a meeting with. For example, when you go to ICSC, you can pre-schedule meetings with your landlord or tenant, choice. But here, it was just so natural. You just walk up, you're having literally a cup of coffee with the owner, or you're sitting down and having lunch with them. Right. So I loved how personal it was.
To that, I would add that, sometimes you go to events and there's an aspect of the event that is networking and things of that nature. To here, I just felt the vibe from everybody was that they really wanted to get to know each other. They wanted to really understand, what do you do? They wanted to talk about their projects and some of the things that they're working on, and that interconnectivity was palpable from the beginning. I thought that the majority of the retailers that I met were very well prepared. They really had a clear understanding of what is their demographic, what are they looking for, what do they want in a shopping center, what is their plan for growth. So there was a lot of that in all the interactions that I had. Really, I mean, it was very impressive.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm definitely going back next year. And I'm already trying to think, who can we nominate? Who would be a good fit? Well, I know you already have a couple in mind. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not going to put it out there yet at all, but we're already starting to think about that. So if you are a shopping center owner who happens to be listening, a landlord or tenant rep, or a small business rep, definitely put it on your calendar for next year. I'm not sure, the dates aren't out there yet, but we will have the link to the SFIRA awards page so that you can keep track of them for next year. But so after we did all of the networking outside, we go into the room and sit down, and they started out with the retailer Shark Tank, which I know you loved. I mean, we both are a fan of that show because of the small business potential, right, that it creates. So what did you think about that part?
Yeah, so just to give people a lay of the land. So basically, if you look at it from this point of view, the program is divided into 3 segments. The first one is Meet the Retailers, and that's the interactive where you're walking around, you're meeting people, you're having conversations. I saw so many people I hadn't seen in a long time, and what I found really, really exciting is once you're into the space and you start the program, I was thinking, well, how are they going to do this Shark Tank thing? And I heard from other people that had been there before that there are different iterations. That sometimes it's the 3 independent retailers and the person doing the pitch is the landlord. In this case, it was the independent retailer making the pitch, and then you have the 3 landlords that are sitting there that are making the offers. And I thought it was really, really. I could have had a lot more of that. I could have done another iteration of Shark Tank.
It was super fun. So the 3 retailers were Beth's Shops of Arrowhead, the Main at Weston Town Center by Weston Leasing, and MMG Equity Partners Plantation Square Plaza. So those were the 3 landlords who were looking for a prospective tenant. And the prospective tenant was Liquivida, a personal wellness company, which is that company that you were talking about that actually gave a lady a live IV drip on stage. So it was funny because they asked for volunteers at the beginning and everyone kind of looked around, and then all of a sudden like a bunch of hands went up. Not mine, but but that was pretty cool. And I spoke with her afterwards, and she said she felt great because, it was a vitamin B12 something, that's supposed to give you energy and hydrate you and everything else. So these 3 retailers were competing to get Liquivida into their space because she was looking to expand. And
Liquivida has, again, a great story. Was founded by a firefighter. And, I thought that the lady that made the presentation on behalf of Liquivida was really on point on everything that she discussed regarding the business, regarding their expansion plans, and having a very clear point of view as to what they're looking for and as far as space, the configuration of the surrounding businesses, how much TI she wanted. I mean, it was very detailed and very clear what her asking was. It was interactive from the beginning. It wasn't like a long presentation. This wasn't Shark Tank where you're playing to the cameras. This was really a conversation among 3 professionals that really, I thought the Q&A and the interactivity of it and how precise they were with their questions was excellent.
Right. So it was pretty cool. Like I know some of them.
Don't you think? And I'm sorry to interrupt. Like if you're an agent and you're a commercial agent, you maybe haven't done a lot of retail, that just being there in the room and seeing the conversations back and forth between prospective tenant and prospective landlord would have given you a great insight as to what the priorities are for both and how a deal can be put together. Because I think we saw the beginnings of a deal being put together with one of the landlords.
Well, they did. They picked. Finally, they made a match. So then they'll go back and start negotiating, obviously, a lease. But they at least came to agreement on the terms, and she picked the site where she wanted to be. I thought it was interesting because the questions that the landlords asked of her also showed what their concerns were, like within their own centers, right? So it was parking. How many people are you going to have at what time in the center? What are your peak days, right? What are your peak times during the day? Are you pretty much going to be there when my other retailers are closed? Or are you going to be there when all my restaurants are open and full and have the parking? So it was super cool because that gave insights. And
one of those questions that you mentioned, to be a little more specific, was about what is the average length of time that a consumer spends in the store. And, I thought that was, I picked up on that as well. I thought that was really interesting because it speaks to the, I guess, the pressure that puts upon the parking, being, how much turnover there's going to be in those parking spaces, how much time do they need, all that. So I thought that was interesting as well.
Bunch of fast casual restaurants or the U.S. Postal Service or something that needs fast and close parking because people want to be in and out of there within 20 to 30 minutes max. But then you have something that has a lot of people holding spaces, a lot of spaces for 3 hours. So I thought that was super cool. And again, it goes back to some things that you and I fixate on all the time, which is parking, in addition to location. But I thought that was pretty cool because it definitely showed the consideration that the landlords are giving not only to their new tenant, but their current tenant, right? Because landlords want their tenants to be happy. They don't want to have friction with their tenants. So if there is a pressure point in one of their centers, they're going to look at that to make sure that the new tenant isn't making it worse.
Also because, you have really 3 very good landlords there, right? Mm-hmm. And so they're very purposeful and intentional in how they curate the shopping center experience. From the outside looking in, people that are not in the industry sometimes may assume that any store can go anywhere, right? And it's just a matter of negotiating and coming to an agreement. But in reality, there's a lot more that goes into that. There's a parking study, to find out how much food and beverage you could have, how much medical you could have, because the requirements are different for those uses as they are for a brick and mortar store that is selling clothing, a boutique clothing store, et cetera, or to your point, something like a postal office that would need a lot of in and out parking. But I also found interesting that 2 out of the 3 retailers are in the middle of expanding and growing their centers. They are redeveloping those centers. I don't know if you thought that was indicative of where we are. I think 10, 15 years ago, the development of the center would have been exclusively centered around retail. Correct. What I found interesting is that 2 out of the 3 retailers landlords that are expanding their centers are including a huge segment of it, which is multifamily or apartment or condo units.
Right. I love that because I always love the idea of live, work, play and being closer and not having to drive everywhere. And being a transplant from Northern California, I remember coming to South Florida and thinking, oh my gosh, there's like no character, there's no independence. It's one strip mall from Key West all the way to Orlando. And nothing wrong with that. It was just different, and it didn't create the type of community that I was used to, right? Yep. Coming from, and I imagine that's the same with people coming from New York or Boston or Chicago that are coming for a little bit from denser areas. And this, what I think is so ingenious about this, and I love this, we've talked about this, Danielle Blake and I have talked about this for, years with public policy regarding adding residential to those shopping centers where you can, because one, it just makes sense for both, right? You're creating the demand, right, for your shopping center right there on your property. And 2, you're alleviating the housing and the affordability issue that is affecting pretty much every city in the United States. And it just makes sense, right? Do a mixed use project. Yeah. If you have retail already there, to your point with these 2 retailers that are adding housing, they're just doing it. They're reconfiguring the space and doing it on space that you already have. So And I love that they're doing it with their existing project. It's not a tear down and a rebuild, right?
I also always have found it interesting that you're almost creating your own class of living arrangement. What I mean by that is that you're creating an urban environment in a suburban environment, right? Because you still get the fact that you're in the suburbs, right? You're not in downtown, and I don't think any of the three centers are in in that urban environment, right? But now by creating this mixed use, now you're able to live there, walk down, and still have that experience of being able to walk to your coffee shop, walk to your dry cleaners, walk to, you still have that walkability factor that is created, and the fact that, everything is accessible. And so therefore, you have the center that becomes part of the amenity of the location is within that center. And then there's also the amenity of where you are geographically.
Right. For those of you that are in South Florida, these three centers were in Weston, Davie, and Plantation. So all suburbs of Broward County. Very popular in terms of places where people want to live, but to your point, not the density and the walkability that we're used to in more urban areas. So I love that. Yeah, I think we have to come up for a word for that. It's like a mini urban area in the
suburban.
Something I don't know.
Urban.
But it also shows, to our point that we were talking about earlier, it also shows the national trend that we're seeing where people who did move from urban centers to the suburbs during the pandemic and have decided to stay in the suburbs now want the convenience and the amenities of not having to necessarily get in their car and drive just because they want a cup of coffee just to go get a haircut. Yeah. So
And if I may throw this out there, and I know we'll go back to the awards, but I will say there's a development close to in Westchester where they developed it's a medical center that is geared towards seniors, but they also develop senior housing in the complex at the same time. Right. So they have rental senior housing, and then they have all of the medical aspect of the plaza, and then they have some other retail that complements both.
Right.
And I thought that was, again, it's a great use of the land, right? And it provides, it's like a switchblade. You just have so much more flexibility about its uses, and it impacts the community, right? Because it becomes really a positive development, and just thought that is the way of the future. It's thinking beyond the next 5, 10, 15 years, but thinking, way beyond that and how it can be used for multiple purposes.
And talk about hyper curating your shopping center, right? Because now you're literally building in the demand within the residential.
Absolutely.
And, market rent, affordable rent, whatever, you're creating the ideal demographic for your tenants and vice versa. I think you become much more marketable.
And it's beautiful.
Yeah. They did a beautiful job.
It wasn't a lot of care went into the design of it.
Correct. So getting back to the awards ceremony, and this is the great thing about these types of events, right? Is that they give you insights into trends, and you get to link and connect the dots on the next thing is, right? Whether it's retail or whether it's office, whether it's residential, whether it's a neighborhood or a location. It gives you kind of a peek into trends and where to look next, kind of along the point of knowing where the puck's going to go, not necessarily where it is. So
and we also had a couple of conversations with people that are doing a new mixed-use development or doing a new retail development, and they spoke to us about some of the people that we represent and coming into their space. So I thought that was another very positive aspect of the awards. And all of that happened in that period of time at the beginning, those first 45 minutes when you're meeting everybody, and then you get to go inside and experience this together.
Right. If you ever go to a Beth or a Hugh event, you know that they're always about connecting people. And the funny thing is they're landlords, they're retailers, and they are great about sharing. They feel like there's enough business for everybody, instead of having a mentality of, no, well, why would I share my clients with these, with other potential competitors? They don't see it that way.
Let me write that down. That's another question for Beth. I love it.
It's just amazing how giving and sharing they are, and it's true, right? If everybody, I'm going to do better if everybody around me does better. Right. So,
and one thing to add about Beth and Hugh is that when we were at the onset of the pandemic and we were trying to figure out what was going to happen, what all of this meant, especially knowing that a big percentage of the spaces within shopping centers were dedicated over recent years before the pandemic. And it's certainly true today to food and beverage and experiential retail. And so I will say they were front and center available, right, to give us their perspective and to really teach us about the value of having a well-curated center that is not only filled with national brands, right. Because, there was a big difference between not only those retailers that were in the shopping center, but how they were funded and the lending side of the CMBS side of it versus working with a regional bank. So there was a lot of insight that they always provided. So, shout out to them because they've always been available for the benefit of the community.
Right, of sharing information. So some of the awards, so the live voting was so cool because since we hadn't been, we weren't sure how they were going to do it. And it's basically you text a number, right? You send a text with whoever your vote is, either number 1, 2, or 3. They sent out a videographer to each of the businesses to record the businesses. So in addition to meeting the people that represent those businesses in person, you got to see a video of the owner and the space and everything else to get a better idea of the overall concept. So they showed that for each of the categories. Some of the categories were best personal care, and Blade Barbershop was the winner. Yeah. You made some comment, well, like, of course, everybody here likes a good design, because I guess you really liked the design that we saw in the video.
I thought that was the biggest differentiating factor among the 4 was that the build-out was just gorgeous. Right. And I think everybody there was like, hey, they invested a good amount of money. The business looked very, very robust. And I think that's why they were such an overwhelming favorite when it's voting. But imagine you go to an awards assembly and you're watching these videos in rapid fire, these, maybe 3-minute videos of each person. And, first of all, great job. They did a great job of conveying who they are in a very short period of time, and great production power. These were not videos made with an iPhone. Right. They were well lit, good audio, professional videographer. So, great job. Kudos to, again, the team at SFIRA for putting that together. I love that, number one, they have a video that they can reuse, right? Except for the last part where they say thank you for the nomination. But, they have a great video about themselves. Number 2, it gives them an opportunity to really pitch their business in a room full of landlords, right? Or landlord reps. So I thought that even if you don't win in the live voting, you're still a winner. Still a winner, right? Sure. But then there's a cool part where we're all not only voting live, but we're seeing the numbers. And it looks like almost like a race, like a horse race. You're like, oh, yeah. And there was one at the end where they only won by 1 vote. It was like, it was excellent that was the last one. So
it was super cool.
Good experience.
And then another one of the categories was Best Wellness, which was Liquavida, who won. Best Cafe, Pura Vida, which I was so happy because I love Pura Vida. Best Coffee Shop was Naughty Coffee. I'd also been to that one. Love them. Best Latin Restaurant, Tulio's Tacos and Tequila Bar. Best Neighborhood Spot was Saz of Kebab. Best sit-down restaurant was Motec Cafe. So what's super cool is some of these we hadn't been to, and we're like, oh, that's in Doral. Let's go there. Oh, we know where that is. Let's go there. So in addition to exposing the retailers to potential landlords, everybody in that room was also a potential customer. So, and
there were a couple of bagel places that looked so appetizing, and it was very smart for them to feed us lunch before the live awards, because I think we would have been so hungry just seeing all the amazing. There was this couple that won, and I forget the name of their business, but they created. They actually work for the school system. They provide meals. Bread. Oh my God! Bread. I mean, it was so cool because they didn't have a true brick and mortar. They're building out their new brick and mortar. So, they have like a kiosk, and I mean, those breads look
for those
appetizing.
of you in South Florida, supposedly they're giving Now Sperry Farm and the cinnamon rolls at Now Sperry Farm a run for their money. So I could almost smell the cinnamon smell. But yeah, they won. I forget which category they were in, but the best bakery, I think. But they won that. So yeah, that was really cool. So, and again, we both commented on how most of the businesses were food concepts and restaurants, self-care and wellness, and very few retailers. It'll be interesting to see, to find out the whys and dig a little deeper. That I'll start asking about that, and seeing if next year, I was thinking like home goods places, and there's so many great little boutique shops and everything else. I mean, since that's where I happen to shop, because I get overwhelmed going to a mall. I haven't been to a huge regional mall, and I can't tell you how long, because to me it's just overwhelming. So
I also found it interesting because there's nuance within nuance. So, I found it interesting, the size. We saw some wellness spaces they're a new form of gyms, for lack of a better term, and I was really surprised by how small their footprint is and that they require. And the same thing with the food and beverage places. I saw, I didn't see like, we need 5,000 to 10,000 square feet for a restaurant. Everything is a lot smaller in the footprint that they want within the space. So I thought that was really interesting. I think along the way, almost everybody who was there was looking for, for a smaller footprint. And
correct, 3,000 square feet or less, and most of them were less. There was even a gym, Sweat 440, that had a super, they said that they could work in 1,300 up to 3. And they said everything's movable. Everything's modular. They can move everything. They didn't have anything that requires being tied up to a beam or anything. I also asked about second floor, since we've had issues with gyms on the second floor and the throwing of medicine balls and the dropping of weights. And he was like, no, this isn't that type of a gym. Everything that we do is circuit interval hit training. So, super, super interesting, because that also opens up where they can be. And not all of them needed to be in a grocery anchored store. Lots of them were fine not being grocery anchored retail, which was good to hear for the smaller owners that don't have grocery anchors. Okay. What was your favorite part?
I could have seen 2 or 3 more Shark Tanks just because of the interaction. I thought that we live in a world where whenever you go to a conference or anything like that, most people are on their phones, right? And I thought what was really cool is that everybody was participating in the voting. Yep. Everybody was paying attention, and we were using our phones to vote, of course, but I thought that was a really cool experience. And then even within the table, we started joking around about, how it looked like a horse race. Can we vote twice? How many times can we vote? So I thought that was really, overall a really cool experience. You could tell also the people that have been there multiple times because they were ready. I mean, they had these flyers, they had information. So I can see why this is an event that will continue to grow and do well. But yeah, for me, it was just the interactivity was my favorite part, because it's unlike any other conference that I've been to or award ceremony,
Right, because it was a mix. It's an award ceremony, but to your point, most award ceremonies are profit centers, right? So you win an award and then they want you to buy a table and an ad in the magazine and all this kind of stuff. Here, most of the stuff was sponsored. They both got great sponsors for a lot of the events.
And the fact that it's a not-for-profit, so what they do with the proceeds is...
Don't you steal, that's my favorite part.
Please, share it. What is your... hold on, let's back up. Let's go back.
So, my favorite part...
Wait. Jennifer, what was your favorite part?
Thank you for asking, Fernando. I'm so glad you asked. So, my favorite part was that this award event is not-for-profit. To my point earlier, most of these are, and they're a way to generate revenue for the magazine, whoever is sponsoring the event. I did not know that this was not for profit. I figured, I'd never even really thought about it either way. But when I found out that it was not for profit, I found out at the time that they're going to give scholarships to 5 students from UM, so one each from UM, FAU, FIU, NSU, and FSU. And they're all pursuing degrees in commercial real estate. And oh my God, God bless Hugh and Beth, because they are so giving, but they want to encourage and grow the next generation of commercial real estate reps, developers, owners, whatever. And
award. I mean,
it was nice. They got $2,500. That's big
for a student.
And
not only the encouragement, but also the connectivity. Like, they say you guys got to meet these people. These are your future, perhaps your future employers,
right?
Or your future colleagues. So I thought that
Definitely
was phenomenal.
Intern potential. Yeah. So that was my favorite part, because it was unexpected. And to your point of how has it changed over the years, I guess it's always been nonprofit, and they had given to previous organizations and nonprofits in the community before. And I guess 2 or 3 years ago, they came up with the idea wait, let's invest in our future. And so, oh my God, I love that. That just gave me goosebumps. One of the things that Beth said in one of the clips that I got her on is independent retailers are the souls of our properties. And I love that, because we always talk about how they're the lifeblood of our community. And you could feel that love and that energy and that wanting, that entrepreneurial spirit across the board. It's completely genuine with everybody who attended. And then on the SFIRA webpage, it says everybody wins when local retailers continue to expand and grow our local economy. So as we get into the holiday season, I just want to remind everybody, shop local first, shop local often. I know there's a huge convenience of going online and just ordering and getting it out of the way, but there is so little connection to what you're buying and who you're buying from when you shop online. And I love the experience of going into a boutique and meeting the people who are working there. They might not be the owner, but the people who are working there, seeing what the owner saw of their own space, how they treat their properties inside, what they're going for. So many of them have like Instagrammable walls, or they have spaces where if you are shopping with somebody who doesn't like shopping, they can sit and relax. Or there's, I don't know. I just love that, and I love that connecting with the business and knowing that they're what's supporting my community.
I love the spirit of that. And I think that, if I may, to your point, what I think people don't realize when they go into a store is what it took for that independent retailer to open that store. Finding the space, negotiating the lease, negotiating some build-out credit if they got any, right? Now building out the space to their vision of it, signing pen to paper, guaranteeing that lease, I mean, it's a big risk that they're taking, and they're signing something for a long term, right? And then it's, doing the build out and, staffing it, doing, hiring people, getting ready, and now opening it up, knowing that for months they're not going to break even, that they're going to have to hustle and work really, really hard. The spirit of I'm going to take this risk, I'm going to build a business, and now I'm in this space. So, I think there is a lot of value in giving them a second look. When you're in a center and you see a local mom and pop store, give those a second look. There's something valuable in there that you're going to find. And what I know about small businesses is that they also patronage to other small businesses. They spend in other small businesses as well. So it's an ecosystem that where we all relate. I remember speaking to a business owner. It was a food and beverage concept. It was their first restaurant, and it was a quick service restaurant, right? And they spent all their life savings into building it out, and now they're ready to open, and they realize now I got to buy the actual food to make it.
Right.
And they didn't have any money. And they're supposed to open in a week. So now they got to dip further into their credit cards. They got to borrow money because they need to buy the stuff that they actually need. You know, all the equipment was there, of course, but now they actually got to buy the food in order to be able to cook it and to provide. So, and he's telling me things of, you know, all of a sudden in the middle of the night, I get a call. There was something wrong with the roof and it leaked. Now we had to redo this entire built out area. Like, you know, there's a lot of those stories out there, but people persevere,
right?
Which is amazing.
And to your point, I mean, who wouldn't want to meet and get to know a firefighter who saw a need and based on the people he was picking up and took an idea, and while he's still firefighting and still being a paramedic, he risks his income, his stability to pursue that idea, to offer that to the community, overcoming probably fear and doubt, although a firefighter who goes into a flaming building, this is probably nothing. You know, opening a business is probably a piece of cake, but it's not. I mean, the fear of that. The two teachers that, you know, are still teaching and love what they do, and they take this and do this side hustle on the side again. Taking a risk and everything. I mean, those are the type of people with the grit. And you know that after overcoming that fear and risking the money and putting everything on the line and opening yourself up to all of the naysayers who are like, do you know that X% of restaurants fail in the first year and X% is, you know that they heard that. Yeah. You know that they probably got denied from lenders and they persevere anyway. And that is why what the pandemic showed was that those small businesses did everything they could to survive and to do whatever it took. And I mean, who doesn't want to know those kind of people?
And it is that very spirit that SFIRA, the South Florida Independent Retailer Awards, recognizes. You know, again, we want to give a lot of kudos to Beth Azor and Hugh Chen for putting it together. And thank you for the invitation, Jennifer. I had a wonderful, wonderful time. So, do you have your fun stat of
I do have my fun
All right. Who wants to go first?
You can go first.
I don't want to.
No, you're not
hear
going
any.
to take my.
No, I'm not going to take. You sure?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I took a picture of it. So so this is from the National Retail Federation facts, since we're talking about retail. And we are, right smack into the middle of the holidays. 92% of consumers plan to celebrate winter holidays. The total retail sales during holiday season is projected to grow in 2023 by 3 to 4% between $953 to $966 billion on average that is spent by the consumer. 43% begin shopping before November, mostly to spread out their budget. And the number one item on wish list is, this is kind of boring, gift cards. 55%.
Oh, and I just heard something on one of my radio stations that I listen to that said, please don't give me gift cards. Yeah. Mine is from the TD Bank Small Business Survey that they did in South Florida for 2023. That many they just completed the survey, that many small business owners plan to expand in what's left of 2023, and 3/4 of the business owners anticipate that their revenues, sales, and numbers of employee will increase by February of 2024. Wow. Which is interesting, because if you look at the vacancy numbers of retails and you listen to the national numbers of stats like you just quoted, it makes sense, right? Retail vacancies are like at 3% or less in some areas. It makes sense that they would feel confident, even though people keep talking about the recession, where they've been talking about it for over a year, and things are definitely getting tighter with capital flows and everything else, but retailers are still saying, no, we're still good to expand and hire for 2024. So shop local.
That's right. Shop local, support local businesses, support small businesses. And we want to thank you again for joining us on another episode of Between Two Chairs. We would love some feedback, anything that you want to send back to us, any ideas for shows, for episodes, we're more than happy to welcome there. We're excited for a few things that we got on their works for 2024, and we will join you and we hope you join us on our next episode. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.